The Subcommittee on Water Resources and Environment will come to order. I ask unanimous consent that the chairman be authorized to declare a recess at any time during today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that members not on the subcommittee be permitted to sit with the subcommittee at today's hearing and ask questions. Without objection, so ordered. As a reminder, if members wish to insert a document into the record, please also email it to documentsti@mail.house.gov. I now recognize myself for the purposes of an opening statement for 5 minutes. I'd like to thank Assistant Secretary Taylor and Lieutenant General Graham for joining us today as we discuss the administration's priorities for the Water Resource Development Act of 2026. The biennial water bill is the primary way that Congress guides the Corps' projects and priorities. It is important for the committee to hear directly from the Corps leaders at the beginning of the water process. By authorizing projects and studies and providing direction on the programmatic changes, water bills improve the ability of the Corps to achieve its civil works missions of navigation, flood control, and ecosystem restoration. Water 2026 will be the 7th water bill since the committee returned to the biennial structure in 2014. A dependable 2-year water cycle provides the Corps and its non-federal sponsors an opportunity to keep critical water infrastructure projects moving forward and respond to local water resource needs more effectively. An efficient response to the evolving water resource needs across the country is vital for our security, safety, and economic stability. Our nation's ports and inland waterways move essential goods, support local economies, and provide the marine infrastructure that contributes over $500 billion to the nation's GDP. A consistent water process helps to improve and maintain our ports and waterways to meet growing needs. As I proudly shared last fall in my home state of Georgia, the Port of Savannah achieved its second busiest year ever since in 2025, serving nearly 1,700 container ships and handling around 15,000 truckload moves daily. This growth and success are supported by a consistent and reliable water process. I was happy to hear that dredging is finally underway at the Port of Brunswick's inner and outer harbor, but it's been several years since this vital port received routine maintenance dredging. Similar routine dredging projects across the country are burdened by an undue regulatory process and environmental window that seems to prevent the consistent maintenance of federal channels. I look forward to hearing from today's witnesses to get a better understanding of how we can prevent such delays. In addition to our nation's ports, the inland waterways are critical arteries for transportation and commerce. Since becoming chairman of this subcommittee, I have been able to visit several of the Corps' projects across the country, including the Wilson and Chickamauga locks in Alabama and Tennessee. These critical assets that serve our nation's economic and national security are in need of rehabilitation. The necessary maintenance for these projects is taking too long and costing taxpayers too much. In Congress, we have a responsibility to be good stewards of taxpayer money, and the Corps must do better to complete projects on time and on budget. I look forward to hearing about ways this can be done from our panel this morning. With that, I want to welcome Assistant Secretary Taylor and Lieutenant General Graham here today to discuss the priorities of Water 2026. I now recognize Ranking Member Shelton for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Chair Collins, and welcome to our witnesses. Thank you for your commitment to working with the committee as we develop what I hope will be a bipartisan, robust Water Resources Development Act of 2026. At a time when the affordability crisis is affecting every corner of our country and our communities are navigating the threats of climate change, it is incumbent on Congress to prioritize keeping water resource projects affordable and resilient. Back home in West Michigan, water is a way of life, and our waterways are critical to our regional economies and culture. A strong WRDA is absolutely essential for Congress to meet our local communities' economic and environmental needs. Passing WRDA 2026 is a first step towards granting the Army Corps authority that they need to carry out water resource projects and studies. However, we need the funding to back up our action. It was devastating to see the President's fiscal year 2026 budget request proposed a nearly 25% slash to the Corps' budget. Fortunately, Congress rejected this funding cut, but we still need to meaningfully address the Corps' backlog of WRDA project and maintenance needs, which is currently estimated to be over $100 billion, with a B, dollars. The Trump administration has also been less than diligent about the law regarding harbor maintenance trust funds and those investments. Our ports are critical to our local economies as well as our national supply chains. Time is not on our side here. The longer we wait, the more expensive these projects will become, and our ports will start to fall behind. Failing to meaningfully invest in port and harbor maintenance and upgrades will threaten job growth, reliable supply chains, and global competitiveness. We also need full cooperation from our core partners to navigate the inherently collaborative effort of the new WRDA. That's why it's so frustrating that the administration has decided that the Corps needs the Department of Defense approval before district offices can share project details and updates with congressional offices. We don't need this kind of bureaucratic obstacle. We cannot allow partnerships and bureaucracy to undercut this process, and I encourage the administration to reverse this policy so Congress can best serve the American people. I need to warn you, gentlemen, as we look ahead to WRDA 2026, this subcommittee will be keeping the pressure on you too, our core leaders, to promptly and effectively implement previous WRDA policies. Effectively and promptly. The pace of implementation is going to be key. When we were passing WRDA 2024, we heard nonstop about the glacial pace of implementation under the previous administration. But this administration is even slower. What happened to the pressure for the pace on implementation? We have yet to see guidance on dozens of critical provisions, such as to reduce cost share for communities in need, to utilize new continuing authority programs, to address dredging needs in smaller communities, and to maximize opportunity for water supply and conservation where possible. It's unacceptable. The Corps must implement the law and hold up its end of the bargain to best safeguard our water resources. I sincerely hope that our conversation today will include ideas and solutions on what the Corps needs to execute past WRDAs, as well as how we can work together to continue to deliver for Americans across the nation through this year's legislation. Thank you again for your time. I look forward to the conversation. I yield back.
I now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Larson, for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Chair Collins and Vice Ranking Member Skolton, for holding the hearing, and welcome back Assistant Secretary Tell and Lieutenant General Graham. Thank you for being here this morning. Since 2014, this committee has honored its commitment to meet local water resource needs across the country through bipartisan and biennial enactment of the Water Resources Development Act. Predictable WRDAs support core projects while creating good-paying jobs in the construction industry and supporting countless more jobs in the U.S. industries and businesses that benefit directly from these projects. Regular enactment of WRDAs also provides critical policy reforms that improve the function and flexibility of the Corps to respond to local challenges. Failure to implement WRDA on time results in delays and denies critical economic, environmental, and societal benefits to communities across the country. Each presidential administration wants to put its own mark on the management of federal agencies, and based on your ideas for reducing paperwork at the Corps, we are starting to understand your priorities. However, no administration gets to ignore the law and to manage federal agencies as they please, untethered from the legal obligations that Congress mandates. For example, as of yesterday, this administration has formally implemented only 3 provisions from the Water Resources Development Act of 2024, enacted in January 2025. 3. This means that bipartisan benefits that an overwhelming majority of Republican and Democratic members of the House and Senate enacted are not reaching their communities. Failure to implement WRDA 2024 denies the country the benefits of the 21 chiefs' reports that it authorized. Benefits such as upgraded navigation, flood risk reduction, and storm protection projects, as well as ecological restoration and the societal benefits associated with these projects. Failure to implement WRDA 24 means that small, rural, and tribal and other communities will continue to struggle to meet local challenges as these projects remain unaffordable. Failure to implement WRDA 24 increases the vulnerability of America's navigational capacity, both through its coastal and inland ports, as well as the vulnerability of communities to the challenges of climate change and drought. This administration needs to do better. At today's hearing, I expect to hear you recognize Congress as an essential partner in directing and scoping how the Corps implements its missions. I also expect to hear that you will work diligently to make sure that every enacted provision of existing WRDAs is fully implemented in a timely fashion, and that you'll provide the committee with periodic updates on your progress. This committee recently closed its member portal that contains roughly 2,400 project, policy, and environmental infrastructure requests for the upcoming WRDA for 26. Based on member requests, my top line priorities for WRDA 26 will be ensuring that we authorize the next generation of local water resource projects and studies, ensure that all communities, including rural, small, and tribal communities, can affordably partner with the Corps to resolve local challenges, and ensuring that all Corps projects are designed to meet the challenges of climate change and make communities more resilient to stronger storms, rising sea levels, and severe droughts. I look forward to today's testimony and my continued partnership with the chair of the full committee, chair of this subcommittee, and the ranking member and vice ranking member to develop a bill in our traditional bipartisan fashion. With that, I'll yield back.
I would now like to welcome our witnesses and thank them for being here today. Briefly, I know I don't need to, but I'm going to take a moment just to explain our lighting system. There are 3 lights in front of you. Green means to continue. Yellow means you're running out of time, and when it turns red, please conclude your remarks. I ask unanimous consent that the witness's full statements be included in the record. Without objection, so ordered. I ask unanimous consent that the record of today's hearing remain open until such time as our witnesses have provided answers to any questions that may be submitted to them in writing. Without objection, so ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that the record remain open for 15 days for any additional comments and information submitted by members or witnesses to be included in the record of today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. As your written testimony has been made part of the record, the subcommittee asks that you limit your oral remarks to 5 minutes. With that, Mr. Tell, you are recognized for 5 minutes for your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman Collins. Chairman Collins, Ranking Member Larson, Ranking Member Schulten, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss the development of the proposed Water Resources Development Act of 2026. Before I get started, I want to recognize the passing of Congressman Doug LaMalfa, who was an outstanding member of this committee, someone who was a passionate advocate for California's water issues, and someone who taught me, as I'm sure he did many members of this committee, all about California water, and so we miss him. I'm eager to share with you my perspective after 6 months as the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, including what the Corps of Engineers is doing well and where significant reform is warranted. I hope my perspective is valuable to you as you develop proposals for WRDA 2026. I also wish to share an update on the implementation of past WRDAs, which was just raised. It remains a topic of critical interest to members of this committee. Since my last appearance before this committee, the Army Civil Works Program has finalized implementation guidance for the remaining provisions of WRDA 2020 and WRDA 2022, with the exception of provisions modified further by WRDA 2024. WRDA is the law. We're following it. The last 3 WRDAs included 552 provisions, and we are developing guidance for remaining 19 of those provisions. I just signed implementation guidance for 2 of them yesterday. We're going to make sure they're consistently implemented through this guidance. I remain committed to completing the implementation guidance as soon as practicable and look forward to working with this committee to identify opportunities to improve the process for implementing future WRDAs. One thing I've observed to this point is that the Army Corps of Engineers is at its very best when it's responding to emergencies, where it is unburdened by red tape and enters what we like to call Army mode. Specific examples of that come to mind, including the Corps' execution of assignments to clear and remove debris after Hurricane Helene throughout Appalachia particularly in western North Carolina and after the 2025 Los Angeles wildfires. Last August, the Corps successfully supplemented state and local efforts in anticipation of glacial outburst flooding in Juneau, Alaska. And finally, just last month, the Corps executed assignments in response to Winter Storm Fern across the southeastern United States, and we're currently responding to the disaster in the Potomac River. But when it comes to our primary missions, our everyday missions, for decades, the Army Civil Works program hasn't really had a plan. The status quo has been to execute everything all at once, moving each project down the yellow brick road of red tape 1 inch at a time, resulting in inexplicable delays, including to projects that are of strategic national importance. Meanwhile, reaching paperwork milestones is elevated as evidence of achievement. This is simply unacceptable for an agency that is so important to the safety and prosperity of the American people. Stacks of important government paperwork have never saved an American life or community, except perhaps in very cold weather when no other fuel is available. We have to change the way the Army Civil Works program conducts its business, or the next decades will be more of the same. The stars are aligned under President Trump's leadership to change this now. We have in hand $45 billion that the Congress has previously appropriated to our programs, but the Corps has not yet executed. Shockingly, $15 billion of this funding is more than 6 years old. We also have many ongoing projects that the Congress has authorized and that the Corps is building, but that require significant additional funding to complete. The status quo approach is insufficient, meaning we will never deliver on what you expect of us without fundamentally changing our behavior. To meet this challenge, yesterday we unveiled a plan that we call Building Infrastructure, Not Paperwork. It's a plan that was partially inspired by members of this committee, and particularly the chairman of this subcommittee. It's comprised of approximately 27 individual but complementary initiatives to start, to reimagine and rejuvenate the Army Civil Works program. With your support, this will be the most significant transformation of the program since at least 1986. Through this suite of strategic initiatives, it is my goal to harmonize the Army Civil Works program and to realign and right-size the incentive structures of the Corps of Engineers with an emphasis again on building infrastructure and not paperwork. This new plan is driven by a sense of urgency. Our strategy is centered on a fundamental cultural transformation to enhance our effectiveness and restore discipline. We are sharpening our focus on our primary missions under a strategic plan that will deliver on the mandate you've given us. To accelerate project delivery, we're implementing smarter contracting practices, upholding higher design standards, and reforming our partnership pipeline to build what America needs faster and more cost-effectively. A key component to this transformation is overhauling our internal processes, but as President Trump has directed and as bipartisan members of this committee have directed, cutting bureaucratic red tape by reforming our entire regulatory permitting system is important to provide fast, clear, and consistent decisions to the public. I see I'm running out of time, so I'll submit the remainder of my statement for the record, but I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, General Graham, you are recognized for 5 minutes for your testimony.
Chairman Collins, Vice Ranking Member Skolton, Ranking Member Larson, I'm honored to testify before you today in regard to the 2026 Water Resource Development Act. Through the Civil Works program, the Army Corps works with our partners to study, build, and operate water resource projects focusing on our 3 main mission areas of commercial navigation, flood and coastal storm damage reduction, and aquatic ecosystem restoration. Breaking those down. Navigation program, which consists of our coastal Great Lakes channels as well as the inland rivers and intercoastal waterways, underpins much of the national economy, ensuring that commodities can move reliably and efficiently. Our flood and coastal storm damage reduction program maintains 746 dams, over 13,000 miles of federal levees, and 450 miles of shore protection that provide, on average, $200 billion per year in flood damages avoided. To continuously maintain and improve these mission areas, I want to thank this subcommittee for supporting the Corps Civil Works program. Your commitment, as we heard from the chair, since 2014 to pass biannual Water Resource Development Acts has provided us with the authorities necessary to address the changing needs of the nation's water resources infrastructure. We deeply value the authorities you've entrusted to us. Our pledge is to put them to work to deliver for the American people. To that end, the Army Corps' objective each and every day is to safely and efficiently deliver quality studies and projects on schedule within budget. Our current on-schedule rate, as I measured it this morning, for the Civil Works portfolio is 86%. That's an improvement from the 80% that I reported to this subcommittee back in September. So, by focusing on the basics of getting the engineering right, of getting the project management right, and of getting the project delivery team right, we're making our cost estimates more reliable, and our project delivery more efficiently. That said, there's more work to do, more improvements to make. To that end, we're very excited about the Building Infrastructure, Not Paperwork initiative that Mr. Tell outlined. These improvements, delivered by district engineers who are empowered to manage risk, not avoid it, will allow the Army Corps to make the changes necessary to best deliver our important infrastructure mission for the nation. Finally, I too would also like to take a moment to express our deepest condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues of Congressman LaMalfa of California. We will do our best to honor his passion, his absolute passion for the Federal Water Resources mission by continuing our efforts to optimally balance our flood risk management responsibilities with growing water supply needs. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today, and I look forward to addressing your questions.
Thank you. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a statement from the Steel Manufacturers Association dated February 24th, 2026. Without objection, so ordered. I want to thank you both for your testimony. We will now turn to questions from the panel, and I will recognize myself for 5 minutes for questions. Assistant Secretary Tell, when you were here last September, you stated that you supported the idea of delegating some authorities to improve efficiency in the Corps' process, especially when it comes to the recreation mission of the Corps. Does the Corps have the authority in the law to do this now? And if anything, what do you need from Congress to carry this out?
Chairman Collins, thank you for the question. Absolutely, the Corps has the authority to do this now. It's something that we should be taking advantage of. As an update on recreation, we're in a good spot in terms of hiring our organic employees for the coming spring and summer seasons. 188 individuals on board, which is 59% of our goal. We've gotten after it early, but delegation of these missions can be a critical way to expand our throughput and ensure we don't have future mishaps.
You know, don't you think it would also help with some of the internal things that you're looking at internally to help improve efficiency and productivity and focus on what the Corps really needs to be focused on?
Chairman Collins, you're absolutely right. This committee has given us authorities, I think, about Section 203, Section 204, Section 1043. This committee has spoken loud and clear that the Corps ought to take advantage of capable non-federal partners. And if you think about the backlog that was mentioned earlier, the projects we've been authorized to perform but we're not performing, we need to expand our throughput. We have a limited amount of throughput. We need to reserve Corps of Engineers engineering excellence for the largest challenges that confront our country. We need to take advantage of the capabilities of our non-federal sponsors to expand the number of people in our country that are getting after all of these challenges that you all address. You have given us the authorities to do that. Unfortunately, to date, in my view, we have not taken full advantage of them. There has been a cultural challenge related to districts wanting to hold on to work for themselves. And in my view, we got to get everybody in the business of building America's infrastructure and reducing paperwork.
Right, and I think in so doing that, it also is going to speed up the time that the project is going to take, and it also helps save money.
Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely right. I've seen instances at projects across our country where the price we're paying for dredging, for instance, may be 40, 50, or 60% higher than the price that one of our ports might be paying for that dredging.
Right.
And so as often as we can delegate our responsibilities with oversight, of course, to meet the standards that this committee has put forth, we can expand our capability and often get a better price and better schedule by utilizing our non-federal sponsors.
Right, and with having said that, General Graham, Section 8133 of Water 2022 established the Inland Waterways Regional Dredge Pilot Program to award contracts to up to 5 years for these dredging projects. Can you speak about the cost effectiveness, the reliability, and the performance of this program?
Yeah. Chairman Collins, thank you for that question. Absolutely. By looking regionally, we can get, well, put simply, a much better deal. And we also provide much more flexibility on when and where we dredge. Under Secretary Tell's guidance, we're looking to expand that beyond just a regional look to take advantage of all of the dredging that the Corps does. We are the largest buyer of dredging services in the nation, and we ought to use that market power to get the best deal possible for the American taxpayers.
Yeah, you know, I always have saying customer's king. So, I mean, I think if you look at it from that angle, then you have the upper hand and can negotiate not just maybe one dredging project, but multiple dredging projects. And let your dredging organization or the company that gets it, let them set their schedule, and as long as it falls within our guidelines. So, all right. Do you consider multi-year contracting as an effective way to reduce these dredging costs?
Chairman Collins, absolutely. And as we discussed earlier, by looking nationwide, putting in broad, multi-year contracts, we believe we'll be able to get the best deal for the American taxpayers.
Yeah, you know, I know when we were talking not too long ago about just the fact of how much it costs to actually, when you have to move a dredge off of a project and they could have been moving towards another project, but then you've got to pay them to move to that project. So you're actually saving a lot of money. And Secretary, I don't know if you want to join.
Chairman Collins, you're right. In addition to expanding our scope nationally, where we are a better negotiator across the negotiating table from private industry who are our partners, there's a challenge we have related to some of the environmental restrictions that often haven't been even re-examined in decades. I like to equate it to your spouse asking you to run 10 errands on a Saturday, but requiring you to go to the post office, the Walmart, the Home Depot, and to soccer practice in a specific order all across town. You can't do it in the most efficient way to execute your mission, and that's how we're doing dredging today. We're sending our dredgers here and there based on these environmental schedules. If we can reduce that burden on them, we can get a much more efficient product for the taxpayer.
That's right. And a lot of times we make them come back home and then go to the next one and then come back home. And it's not very efficient. I know I'm out of town with that. I now yield 5 minutes to Ms. Golton.
I think you could get a working mom to work that schedule for you, Mr. Tell. We'll give you a schedule for those errands on a Saturday. I joke. Assistant Secretary, the last time you testified before the subcommittee, I discussed how Grand Haven Inner Harbor almost missed a dredging cycle, which would have threatened the harbor's 450 jobs and carried $88 million in an annual economic impact. After months of advocacy, local, state, federal levels finally struck a compromise to dredge about 90% of the harbor to ensure that ships could move through the channel without light loading. However, the remainder of the harbor, that 10%, even though it's smaller, is critical, essential, right? If you can't get through that 10%, we can't get through it all. The state needs to conduct sediment testing to determine if the area has been contaminated by PFAS. On February 5th, 2026, I sent a letter to the state as well as the Corps to understand the extent of which the two are working together already to engage in advanced planning to address the dredging of this potentially contaminated water. I received a thorough, timely response from the state of Michigan, but have not received clarity from the Corps yet. One of my top priorities for WRDA 2026 is boosting collaboration and advanced planning between state and federal leaders so that we can get to this quicker pace of these projects rolling out, right? Efficiency and effectiveness is what it's all about. So can you first commit to sending a written response to my February 5th inquiry? And additionally, can you speak to how critical it is for the Corps to work with its state partners to ensure timeliness here?
Ranking Member Scholten, thank you for the question. You're hitting on something that is absolutely true in Michigan. It's true across the country. Dredging is the lifeblood of our economy. It's the hidden part of our economy that most Americans don't fully appreciate. It is the arteries of dredging, and our ports, our waterways are the arteries of competition and the arteries of our success. Everywhere that we can do this, we need to be doing it. I will commit to get you a written response to your letter. In every program that we take on, we have non-federal partners, state, local, sometimes regional, that we must work closely with in every stage. And I will pitch it to General Graham to see if he has an update on this particular project that you've outlined.
Thank you, Mr. Dell.
Vice Ranking Member Scholten, thank you again for that question. We certainly understand the importance of Grand Haven Harbor to the economy. I think our collaboration with the state of Michigan on testing for PFAS contamination is going pretty well. They kind of worked through some of the challenges. If it's primarily sand, there's less likelihood that there's going to be PFAS contamination on it. It really only sticks to the fine silt, so they're working to characterize the sediment in the outer and inner harbor. And so right now, our understanding is that the deep draft ships can get to all the commercial docks. And right now, we do understand that a task order to do the next round of contracting was issued in March of this year. And that'll do a lot of the outer harbor dredging. We are looking for a follow-on contract that we'll put in place this spring and summer if the testing that's ongoing shows that that middle section by Harbor Island isn't contaminated with PFAS to the Michigan standards. Then we'll try to make sure that we're in a position to go ahead and dredge that later this year.
Thank you. I appreciate that thorough response. Still do request a written response, but we appreciate the update very much, and look forward to continuing conversations about how federal and state can continue to collaborate for advanced planning. I have about a minute, and I want to touch on data centers here really quickly. A huge hot topic all around the country, but especially back home in Michigan. And constituents throughout my district are rightfully concerned about how these projects are going to impact the state's water. I believe that we can strike the right balance between investing in our digital economy and creating good jobs without harming our natural resources or putting big data profits over our communities. But smart policy decisions start with good information. The Army Corps plays a really important role in water management, and I want to make sure that we can leverage the agency's expertise to understand how these data centers are impacting our precious water resources. So back to you, Assistant Secretary Tell, can you touch on how the agency is thinking, if at all, about how data centers are affecting the use and amount of water maintained by the Corps?
Madam Ranking Member, data centers, as you say, are a developing part of our economy and critical to our competition, our ability to compete. In terms of the specific ways we look at it, we are not, when it comes to water supply, which is not one of our primary missions, but it's certainly something we consider as we are updating water control manuals. We would not specifically look at one facility's water use. We would look at the whole system's water use as we analyze these items. When it comes to our permitting, we have updated our nationwide permits, which are complete. The renewal of our nationwide permits to include data centers, although data centers don't have any particular unique impact on waters of the United States in terms of our regulatory mission that other facilities do, but it is important to understand that data centers are modern facilities that do require permits under the Clean Water Act of 1972.
Thank you. Some follow-ups there, but I'll yield back my time and we'll keep going, but I appreciate the answer.
Now recognize Babin for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. And I want to thank both of you gentlemen for being here today. I represent the 36th District of Texas, home to Port of Houston, lots of ports other than that, waterways, refineries, petrochemical facilities, and we're no strangers to natural disasters. So I want to thank you all for your commitment to protecting and improving our nation's infrastructure there and water resources. I also want to take a moment to recognize Assistant Secretary Tell. Mr. Secretary, I want to thank you for your leadership and for working with your team and Army Corps headquarters to help expedite non-federal led studies. Your engagement, in fact, both of you, your engagement with stakeholders in Southeast Texas, including Cedar Port, is very much appreciated and makes a real difference on the ground. Cedar Port plays a vital role in supporting jobs and commerce, economic growth in our district, and we value the strong partnership between the Corps and local stakeholders that who are working hard moving these projects forward. I also want to thank you for your engagement in Buffalo Bayou and Tributaries Resilience Study as well. They were devastated by Hurricane Harvey, and we're counting on meaningful flood protection. So looking forward to continue working with you. My first question is, Mr. Tell, you've announced a Build Infrastructure, Not Paperwork initiative. First off, I want to thank you for that. That ought to be across the all the federal government, same thing. So what specific regulatory steps are you eliminating or streamlining to shorten project timelines?
Congressman Babin, thank you for the question, and thank you to your district for welcoming me when I was there recently. One of the ways that I think about it, and it particularly applies to coastal Texas, is we have not had a culture of prioritization. And I just want to point this out. We haven't really had a plan. If you ask a district commander at any of our 39 civil works districts, hey, what are the top priorities in your district? It's not a question that they've often been asked. And I think that the taxpayers have invested in these leaders, in their ability to lead and command and have military judgment. I think we ought to be listening to our district commanders. And I think about your district and the areas around it that are so critical to our projection of energy dominance. The American economy depends in many ways on coastal Texas, coastal Louisiana, and elsewhere. But it's also very vulnerable, as you said, to a hurricane like Hurricane Harvey or a hurricane with a storm surge. It's critically important that we analyze our assets as a nation in terms of their importance. I can't think of a place off the top of my head that's more critical to our national security than your district and the areas around it. And so this is the type of thinking. We need to empower our commanders to answer your question. We need to empower our commanders to determine what is their priority and then hold them accountable from year to year about how they're cutting red tape and delivering on those projects, whether it's funding, but more importantly, process and effort. Rather than expecting them to inch every project down the field 1 inch at a time and then have to restudy them after 10 years of studying, we need to identify which projects within the districts, within the divisions, and at headquarters are, on the basis of the military judgment of our commanders, most important to the nation. And that is a very fundamental and simple way that I believe we can cut through much of the red tape that we face.
That's wonderful. So what changes are you making to ensure feasibility studies and construction phases would be able to move faster without compromising safety or environmental standards?
Congressman, it's a great question, and I'll ask General Graham to add to what I'm about to say, but one of the primary efforts, I talked about prioritization across the nation, but there's also an effort to prioritize within projects. Quite often we study a very large swath, a very large area, and we study it, we try to boil the ocean with studies for decades, rather than when we in an early phase identify a feature or an initiative that could start delivering for the American public now. So we've implemented a new process called RAPID, which is designed to make these early decisions, get features that could be authorized and funded by Congress to the Hill as quickly as we can, so that rather than study the universe for decades, we're able to start building things now.
Absolutely. And General Graham?
I just want to add emphasis to Mr. Tell's point of the sooner we get the decision makers, the district engineer involved at the earliest stages, the better our outcomes are going to be. Like Mr. Tell spoke to, we can study a whole bunch of various options, but there are decisions we can readily make at the beginning of a study to winnow that down to just what the leading options are, the leading alternatives are, and then we should focus on that, and that'll give us a faster product, more efficiently delivered.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm looking forward to continuing our collaboration for water projects in the future. I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Larson for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Tell, in July of 25, the Corps estimated that there would be 12 chiefs reports completed for awarded 26. And today, Congress has received 2 of those reports. One of them happens to be the turning basin in the Columbia River between Washington and Oregon. What additional chiefs reports should we expect in time for incorporation into Order 26?
Ranking Member Larson, thank you for the question. I will defer that question to the chief. They are his reports.
Ranking Member Larson, I'm tracking somewhere between 7 and 13 additional chief's reports or director's reports that we'll try to get in. Talked to the staff this morning. We know that the end of May is usually the hard deadline, but we're not going to go pencils down. We're going to keep working on these additional director's reports and chief's reports throughout the summer. But to your staff, we absolutely want to get these in as soon as possible.
So when you get them on your desk, how long is it? How long is the turnaround? So
I'll sign those usually immediately. To the earlier question, we want all of the Corps' leadership to be taking a look at these projects earlier. So by the time the chief's report gets to my desk, I've seen it, General Kelly's seen it, Mr. Tell is certainly well aware of it, and that will speed this whole process up.
Thanks. Assistant Secretary Tell, several ports have expressed concern to me that the administration is going to propose using Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund receipts to construct or maintain projects on the inland waterway system. That is a tremendously bad idea. It'd break the commitment we've made to shippers that these funds would be dedicated to the maintenance of coastal harbors, since that's where this money largely comes from. Does the administration support using Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund receipts for inland waterways projects?
Ranking Member Larson, I'm not going to speak for the administration's policy on this topic. I don't know the answer to it, but what I will say is that this is not, what you've described is not part of the building infrastructure, not paperwork initiative that we put out yesterday. And so I can't speak any further.
It wouldn't be, because it's a different set of things, but I just want to be sure that you understand that if that is going to be a budget proposal or the proposal from the administration, but using Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund receipts for inland waterways when the dollars for the fund is produced by the coastal harbors, there's going to be a problem. So,
thank you, sir.
Secretary, thanks for briefing me on your upcoming proposal on the BIMP. One of my priorities is that core projects be affordable to communities of all sizes. And your proposal, you discuss expanding core authorities to allow non-federal sponsors to take on design and construction of projects and seek repayment for the federal share after the fact. How would that expanded use of alternative delivery method benefit smaller, rural, tribal communities that can't afford to advance these funds and then to wait for reimbursement? Have you thought through that?
Ranking Member Larson, you raise a great point here. And the way that we see it is that if we use the authorities that you provided to us to expand the overall capacity of our nation to deliver on infrastructure, it will reserve the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers excellence for projects that are national in scale, or projects for communities that don't have those capabilities, the ones you described. But we do have non-federal sponsors that do have those capabilities. And so to the degree that we can let them help shoulder the workload burden, it's going to make it better for everyone, because it will reserve General Graham's team's expertise for communities like the ones you described.
Yeah. And we've had, in the Pacific Northwest, I've worked on projects using Core 206 authorities on a very successful creek restoration, fairly small project compared to much larger projects. And so there are different sizes of projects that the Corps has authority to act on, as well as different abilities that these jurisdictions have to participate without Corps. So finally, Worded 24 formally expanded the target timeline for study development to 4 years and $5 million. Non-federal sponsors are concerned the Corps continues to scale down projects to conform to the 3 and 3. When your staff briefed the committee on your potential reforms, it continued to cling to the 3 and 3 goal, despite the fact that we changed that. So can you explain the difference here, the disconnect?
Sure, Ranking Member Larson. The law obviously provides us with 4 years and a $5 million limit to complete a feasibility study. That replaces a law that gave us 3 years and a $3 million limit. My view is that the tool that you gave us in terms of putting this box around how soon and how cost effectively we need to complete feasibility studies is a great tool for discipline, to impose discipline on the system to help produce an answer for you to your point about chief's reports, rather than studying these things forever. And so I'm not going to, although the law gives me the ability to waive the 4x5x3 requirement, I don't take it as this committee's position that I'm going to be the waiver factory. I think you impose this discipline on the system for a reason. It's because you want studies completed in a reasonable amount of time for a reasonable amount of money. And I'm going to be very reluctant to give any relief to that discipline, because I think it's an incredible tool that you've given us, and I think General Graham agrees.
Thank you. Yield back.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Kiley for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony and all of your efforts to accelerate the process of building that's so important and is vitally important in my state of California, where we've had many issues related to our water supply and have been hamstrung by the state's failure to build adequate water storage really for decades now. So it's really fallen upon local communities to do the best that they can to provide for their own residents. And to that end, I want to thank you for the work you've done with me and my office on a $5.3 million project for preliminary and final design work, along with environmental compliance for a 15-mile raw water pipeline serving West Placer County. And this project's going to connect an existing Placer County Water Agency intake on the Upper American River to Roseville's Barton Road Water Treatment Plant. And once completed, Roseville will retain access to their surface water resources during times of drought or emergency. This will have many benefits. It's going to reduce reliance on a single aging intake at Folsom Reservoir, improve water reliability during emergencies and droughts, serve residents, 2 regional hospitals, and a robust manufacturing and business economy, enhance groundwater banking and efficient water use, increase surface water availability in the Lower American River for municipal, industrial, and environmental needs. And we've worked very hard the last few years. This was originally approved in WRDA, and thank you very much for getting this to the point where it can move forward. I've also, as one of the projects that we've gotten federal funding for, we've enhanced culverts that are very vital to water infrastructure in our area with the Placer County Water Agency. And we're finally starting to have some hope of larger scale changes in California as well. As part of H.R. 1 this last year, there was $1 billion that was secured for new water infrastructure. This was primarily secured through the California delegation, so we look forward to seeing that funding. This is really a Department of Interior decision, but wind up supporting enhanced capacity like raising Shasta Dam in California. And then finally, we have gotten federal approval and significant federal funding for Sites Reservoir in California, which is an off-stream facility that's going to provide upwards of 1.5 million acre-feet of storage. This is the first new significant water storage California has seen in several decades, and holds the hope of getting us out of this cycle of floods and droughts, where we have sometimes both at the same time, by the way, in terms of states of emergency, so that we can actually save the water that comes in the wet years and use it in the dry years, so that we're not taking water away from our farmers, forcing them to fallow their fields, forcing our citizens not to water their lawns or take shorter showers. So your work is critical to many pieces of that. I want to thank you for everything that you're doing and for the very constructive relationship you've had with my office. I yield back.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Garamendi. Where's he? There he is. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Tella and General Graham, thank you very much for your testimony today and for the answers that you provided thus far. I want to go through 3 issues. I'm going to start with the California Delta and a decision that is now before the Army Corps of Engineers. And I suppose, Mr. Tellis, you will also be involved. It's the record of decision. I would hope that the Army Corps of Engineers would deny the federal permits to allow the state of California to dig its proposed Delta Conveyance Project tunnel that has very serious impacts on the Delta. So that's question number 1. Where is that? So we sent a letter on February 3rd to you, General Graham. I would not expect a reply in 2.5 weeks, but here you are, so that's question number 1. Question number 2 goes to the Mare Island Strait Channel dredging. This is was in the 2024. It directed the Army Corps of Engineers to expedite the completion of the Mare Island Strait feasibility study. This has to do with the SHIPS Act and the ability of that particular facility in Mare Island to handle larger ships. And the third question deals with the overall dredging in the San Francisco Bay Area, including to Sacramento and Stockton. What is the status of that? And so those are the 3 questions. Let's start with the Delta. General Graham.
Representative Garamendi, thank you for that question. Primarily, our role in the Delta Conveyance project is just our regulatory work under the Clean Water Act 404. Any impacts to waters of the United States that the new infrastructure that's required for that intake would be. And we'll get back to your office on exactly when we expect to release the supplemental EIS, but we are tracking this closely.
Well, the existing EIS indicates that there are very significant environmental issues associated with the Delta. I won't go through all of them here. They are significant. It is a perfect way to destroy the largest inland freshwater estuary on the West Coast. So this project that's proposed by our governor and others should be a non-starter. The role of the Corps of Engineers is significant. So please get back to us and be happy to further enlighten you on the potential problems associated with it. Most of those are in the record. Okay, the next one having to do with Mare Island.
Sir, on Mare Island, understand that administration's priority is to restore America's maritime dominance, and that's what you're working on here on the old ship or Navy facility that used to be out there. The district has been working on that 216 study. Right now, it's not looking all that favorable. That's not the great news, but the good news is most of that channel is self-scouring down to 30 feet. So that's the good news, and we're happy to come brief you on everything that we looked at.
We certainly appreciate the briefing, but the fact of the matter is that it is, the administration came out with their maritime strategy last week, and it would call for the revitalization of the commercial maritime industry. And of course, we already have a shortage on the West Coast of docks that are available for the Navy. Dredging becomes critically important, and I would take issue with your assessment of the dredging and the normal scouring from the river itself. Not happening. Major project. If we're going to rebuild our maritime industry, we're going to have to deal with this particular one. And of course, there's always Richmond that we could add to it and the other harbors. And finally, the final issue really deals with how we're going to deal with the problems that are associated, again, general issue of dredging in San Francisco Bay.
Representative Garamendi, delighted to say that we're starting to treat dredge material not as a waste product, but as a vital resource to be housed. We've got great authorities from this committee to work to better use.
My final point, General, excuse me for interrupting, but you should keep in mind using the adaptive management program of the Endangered Species Act, thereby providing flexibility, not based on the calendar, but rather on where the species are and whatever potential harm there may be. So adaptive management, Endangered Species Act. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yield back.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Taylor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman and Ranking Member, for holding this hearing today, and thank you very much to our witnesses for being here. The sacrifices you guys made to be here today don't go unnoticed, and we appreciate it very much. I represent many counties along the Ohio River. Congress must pass legislation that encourages growth and development, that speeds up project timelines and protects our communities from flooding without being filled with frivolous regulations. Public-private partnerships have historically benefited the federal government and taxpayers. The Meldal Locks and Dams in my district is a prime example of how public-private partnerships with the Army Corps can protect communities while providing economic opportunities. Completed in 2016, the 3-turbine hydroelectric plant and spillway were added to the Meldal Locks and Dams, generating 105 megawatts for the community. Under Secretary Tell, I understand that the Corps coordinates with the Federal Energy Regulation Commission for these potential partnerships. Is there any opportunity in this upcoming WRDA reauthorization to encourage or promote these partnerships to help create new domestic energy production along this existing infrastructure?
Congressman Taylor, you are absolutely right. And 6% of our nation's energy is from hydropower, 25%. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is the largest owner of hydropower facilities. But we have so many of our dams where hydropower is not not part of the equation. And this is not one of our primary missions, but we can create through our 408 regulatory program, we can create a streamlined process that allows the entire nation to take advantage of the situation that you described in your home state. And we are undertaking, this committee in WRDA 2024 weighed in on streamlining 408. This is, General Graham and his team have got a good grasp on 404 Clean Water Act permits, but when you go around to our districts, they all handle 408 a little bit differently because it has to do with touching our infrastructure like dams, and it's a more sensitive life and safety issue. If we can come up with a streamlined national approach to 408, we can unlock hydropower, potential energy that exists in our system today in the same way we did it in Ohio. We can do it nationwide through building infrastructure, not paperwork. This is one of the exact things that we are doing. So thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you. The Corps' construction and management of levees across the Ohio River have historically protected communities along the Ohio River from flooding, saving countless lives. As these communities grow in population and economic development, local communities may seek to modify the Corps' existing infrastructure through the Section 408 program. Unfortunately, some communities ran into, in my opinion, unnecessary bureaucratic delays while the Corps was completing its completeness determination for a project in my district. My constituents reported that repeatedly the Corps took the full 30 days to respond to each correspondence, delaying the project and holding up critical development. This process began in early June of 2025 and was not resolved until late January 2026, 7 months after the application was submitted for review. I understand that some approvals take time, but project delivery is crucial for folks on the ground, and 7 months for approval can put projects like this one in my district in jeopardy and drive up costs. Undersecretary Tell, when looking at an upcoming WRDA reauthorization, how can Congress ensure that the Section 408 approval process is completed promptly and communities are not worried about losing federal funding?
Congressman Taylor, you're absolutely right. This is a place, as I said before, this committee has spoken on before. Before I leave this job, I hope to have a new rulemaking that streamlines 408 for the entire country so that each member of the public who seeks a 408 permit from the Corps of Engineers can have a process that's timely, that they can rely on getting answers. Obviously, we're not going to compromise our infrastructure, but we have to be able to streamline this process. It's buried way down in our bureaucracy, and it's something we need to elevate. General Graham, anything to add?
Couldn't agree more. We won't sacrifice the integrity of, say, that dam on the Ohio River, but the paperwork processes, absolutely. And I think as Mr. Tell outlined it, is to give district engineers more authorities in that so they can move faster. One piece, if I could add, on the Ohio River, all the icing conditions, the team on the Ohio River, particularly down in your area, performed magnificently well, keeping those vital arteries open during some really challenging conditions, and I'm tremendously proud of them.
Likewise, I was over there with an opportunity to look at some of that work being done, and I really appreciate what was done to help those folks. I'm going to submit this last question, and you guys, maybe Lieutenant General could get back to me with the answer. Ohio is home to many abandoned mines with over 1,300 miles of streams impacted by potential acid mine drainage, many of these streams flowing into the Ohio River. That's why I was pleased to see in the last WRDA authorization for the Secretary to establish a pilot program designed to establish treatment works for abandoned mine drainage in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. Lieutenant General, has the Army Corps of Engineers begun the process of establishing this pilot program?
Congressman, we'll get back to you with an answer on that, but having grown up in Pittsburgh, certainly understand the importance of this issue.
I appreciate that. I yield back, Chairman.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Ryan for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you both for being here again. Good to have you back. When you were here in September and appreciated that visit, I focused on what I made very clear is a top priority for my 800,000 constituents. I want to bring that project up again and maintain that focus. This is the Curious-Joel Aqueduct Connection Project. At that time, appreciate that you both acknowledged that you were tracking this and working on it. I also wanted to thank you, General Graham. I asked you during that hearing for a commitment to meeting with your senior leadership, and you followed through on time and under budget on that meeting with General Gibbs. Appreciated that. Appreciated all the local leadership and Colonel Young in the district being very engaged in this. So I just want to thank you both first and foremost for your continued timely and deep engagement and commitment on this. What has changed even in the few months since I brought this up in September is that the urgency and the dire need for water in this community, unfortunately, just continues to grow. And I wanted to just give you some fresh data points there. And just to refresh your memories, this is a village. It's the biggest municipality in my district. It's one of the youngest and fastest growing communities in the country. The average family size is nearly double the national size of families, 5.37 people per family to be exact. Since 1990, the population has grown 500% in this village. So they are doing everything right to essentially race to keep up with their rapid growth, which we appreciate and want in other parts of the district and the country. And they just need some help to really do that. What has particularly changed is just as they've continued to work this, they are just in a severe water supply deficit at this point. As they work through what is the final phase of a successful 20-year project. The concern is that without we've gotten state funding, we've gotten additional prior federal funding, but we need to speed up the urgency, and so are asking your help on this. In the last year or two, the village has been forced to rely on temporary, unsustainable measures for supplying water. They've been trucking in drinking water. They've been purchasing water at incredible markups just to make sure that their folks, there's a lot of kids in particular in this community, just have adequate water. And this isn't even covering a fraction of their needs. So we were able to get the authorization up for this project in the 2020 forward. I'm going to attempt to do that again, but I specifically wanted to ask, now that the appropriations work is done, how you're thinking about and whether we can get any support in the upcoming work plan that I know you're working on to try to speed this up, because it's just really hard for me to look my constituents in the eyes and say we're not doing everything we can to just make sure they've got water. So would appreciate both your input on that, and again, thanks for your engagement on this.
Congressman Ryan, just to respond, thanks to your advocacy for this community, I think I was on the phone with General Gibbs a few hours after he met with your constituents. I think General Graham was also getting that update at the same time. This is something you brought very clearly to our attention. We're currently in the process of working with Office of Management and Budget to develop our 2026 work plan in response to the Energy and Water Appropriations Act, and appreciate your advocacy on this program.
When are you guys roughly expecting that? I know
the date escapes me. The law says we have 60 days to deliver that work plan to Congress from the date of enactment.
We did our part, and certainly know you need adequate time to do yours. I appreciate that. Again, I just want to thank you both for the work that you're doing and your teams, and ask really just on behalf of my constituents as you're making those hard calls. I know EI projects in particular are often seen as lower priority, and I understand that. There's a huge need across the country, but this one has just reached a really critical point. So thank you. I'll yield back the balance of my time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Westerman for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I grew up listening to President Reagan tell stories to illustrate some hard facts in life, and one of them he used to tell was about the communist Soviet Union, and the guy bought a new car, and he asked them when he would have it, and they said 6 years from now. And he said, "Is that morning or afternoon?" And the guy said, "What do you mean 6 years from now? Why do you care if it's the morning or afternoon?" He said, "Well, because the plumber's coming in the morning." And when I think of some of these projects with the Corps, I can see stories that make 6 years look like a very short amount of time. There's some great illustrations I've dealt with the Corps since I've been in Congress, and then some not so great ones. The first not so great one was my hometown needed 1/4 inch of water out of a lake that's about 260 feet deep in places. They needed 1/4 inch of water per year out of that lake, and it took 16 years to get the Corps to authorize the project, while the cost of building the water supply system skyrocketed. We finally got that done. No common sense whatsoever in doing that. Then I reflect back to a flood on the Arkansas River 5 or 6 years ago. Terrible flood, took sections of levee out, and I had all these farmers wanting to, they were trying to figure out where they're going to be able to plant their crop in the fall, and they couldn't get an answer from the federal government on whether they could get crop insurance if the levee wasn't in place. And Colonel Eric Noy, he's my Corps of Engineers hero. He's retired now, but he came out and looked at the project and started talking about how many years it would take to go through the environmental assessment and the historic preservation. And he got it, though. He realized that was a lot of nonsense that was holding up progress, and he fixed that levee in about 2 or 3 months. So I know that when the right efforts are put forth, the Corps can move mountains. They can move a lot of dirt in a short amount of time, and that gave me great faith in the Corps. Which brings me to my next issue, and that's the 12-foot channel of the Arkansas River on the MCARN system. So it was first authorized in 2004. And here we are, 2026, and there hasn't been one effort made to deepen the channel in the Arkansas River, even though a few years back I was the ranking member on the Water and Environment Subcommittee, and we put new language out there to deepen the channel. There was $200 million that the Corps had for maintenance on the MCARNs, and still nothing's happened. So my question is, when's something going to happen on the MCARNs, and what else does Congress have to do other than authorize and you have funding to do it? How do we get this project to actually happen? Because when I'm back home, the people who use the MCARNs, that's pretty much the number one and only question I get asked.
Congressman Westerman, the frustrations you expressed are exactly why we're getting after the Building Infrastructure, Not Paperwork initiative. We're hoping that we hear fewer and fewer stories like this. As it relates to the MCARNs, I'm pleased to say that I was there recently. It is an incredible facility, an incredible capability we have as a nation. I was at the Port of Catoosa, which is upriver from you, and even past Tulsa. What an amazing facility to deliver products that are created right in America's heartland to the world. With regard to the 12-foot channel depth, I'll defer to General Graham on that. I do know that when we're looking at these types of systems, making sure we don't strand deeper channels against shallower channels is a big consideration. But General Graham, I don't know if you want to provide an update.
Sure, thank you. First, if I'm just going to pivot to the levees. Absolutely, when a flood hits, we need to stay in Army mode and to get those levees repaired. Not within 6 years, not within 5 years, before the next storm hits. That's our absolute goal. And we're here to protect the people's livelihoods behind there. We're not here to defend any of our bureaucracy. So, Representative, you have our absolute commitment to that. On the MCARN system, understand the folks you talk to, their number one concern is getting more savings by a deeper river. My number one concern for that system is the reliability of it. It's about 15 years behind where, say, the Ohio River system is in terms of needing major recapitalization. So when I look at all the engineering reports that come in, making sure that what we have stays reliable is my number one concern.
I understand that, and that $200 million I was talking about, it got moved down to the Three Rivers project, which is infrastructure, which is very important. But fortunately, it wasn't used, so it went back into the maintenance fund. So I want to work with you. I get it that infrastructure needs repairs up and down the river, but it just seems to take forever to get things done. And it's not like you got to dig a new channel the full length of the river. There's a few places where it's not 12 foot deep that need to be dredged out and fixed so that the river can be used. So, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the indulgence, and I yield back.
The chair now recognizes Ms. Friedman for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Point of personal privilege, after his military service, my grandfather spent his entire career with the Army Corps, so I have a tremendous amount of respect for the organization and for what you all do. So thank you so much for being here. Lieutenant General Graham, I had the opportunity to ask you a few questions the last time you were here about the Packer for the LA River Restoration Project, a very important long-time project in my area in Los Angeles. During that hearing, you had told me that the Corps was committed to completing the Packer in time for the 2026 WRDA. Unfortunately, on February 9th, after asking for a status update on the Packer, my staff received communication from the Corps that stated, quote, "Federal funding is not available to continue the project's Packer completion in support of the WRDA 2026 timeline," end quote. Now, my staff and I have sent several follow-up questions, which as of now have not been answered. So I'd like to use part of my time to get some clarity on the status of this very important project with which LA has invested millions of dollars over the years. First, Lieutenant General Graham, can you provide me with the timeline for the completion of the Packer?
Representative Friedman, I will not be able to honor the commitment we made at the last hearing to finish that Packer before the next WRDA bill is due. A multitude of reasons are behind that. Some are the challenges, the absolutely ballooning astronomical costs of real estate, question the viability of it and the ability of our non-federal sponsor to provide the funding to get that real estate. There's also some environmental concerns. I've walked that whole region. I understand how important it is to the community. And, you know, nobody likes large concrete trapezoidal ditches running through their community. Although in the recent rainstorms out there, LA River did its flood risk management job magnificently well. So we are committed to working to see, can we balance the flood risk management needs and the aquatic ecosystem restoration needs? But in the case of LA River, we're challenged to put the conditions together that we believe we're going to have a viable way forward.
Thank you. It's disappointing to hear, and I would love to have more communication with the Corps as we move forward. I mean, certainly LA has put a lot of their own resources into this project over the years. It's been promised to the community. It serves a very important function, but could also serve a more important function if we can do the investments to help capture more water. And my fellow representative from California mentioned water storage, and we've got a lot of water that runs down the river out to the ocean every time it rains, and there are reclamation and capture projects as part of this project that are planned. But, you know, for the communities that have lived alongside of this for years and have been promised an amenity that they can use, the communities that have been divided from parts of the city because of this infrastructure project, who want crossings, want to be able to have this not be blighted, but be an amenity for their children moving forward, this would be a huge disappointment. And as the project continues and as it drags on, the costs are only going to increase. So if we just kick the can down the road because of current costs, we're looking at ballooning costs over the years. And again, there's a lot of sunk investment into this. So I would hope that we can keep finding ways to move this forward. In my last minute here, I do want to also mention the deeply concerning directive issued on October 15th, 2025 by the Department of War, which requires the Corps District to obtain approval from the Office of the Assistant Secretary of War for Legislative Affairs before engagement with federal or state elected officials and their staff. I mean, this is something, as we're talking about removing red tape, and that seems to be a priority of the Trump administration and of yours. This is adding layers of red tape that we're just never going to be able to unstick. So, Lieutenant General Graham, how has this directive impeded the Corps' ability to work with Congress, and how do you plan to ensure timely communication with offices regarding time-sensitive information like the LA River Restoration Project if you can't talk to us without going through another agency?
Thank you for that question. The Army Corps of Engineers, we strive every day to function as one team from the district level that are interfacing with your constituents, up through our division level, through my headquarters, and up to Mr. Tell's office. Our goal is to function as one team. And as my interpretation of the guidance from the Secretary of War and the Secretary of the Army, it revolves around the basic principle that the left hand of the organization should know what the right hand of the organization is doing. And it's also around the basic principle that at the lower levels of the organization, they should be entirely nested with the guidance and direction that senior leadership is providing. And so I think that's all well, just, and proper. If the actual execution of that is clunky right now. That's my responsibility to fix it, and that's our commitment to you here today.
Well, it seems to me that adding this layer of bureaucracy is going to make things slower, and maybe us not getting a response is part of that. With that, I yield back. Thank you.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Onder for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Talley, General Graham, thank you for being here today. WRDA works best when Congress sets clear priorities and the Corps delivers real infrastructure, not just process milestones. Secretary Talley noted that the Corps performs best when it's unburdened by red tape and is free to focus on execution. I couldn't agree more. In Missouri, we don't measure success by how many reports are issued, but whether our levees hold, whether our locks operate, and if our communities are protected. Missouri's 3rd District depends on reliable inland, a reliable inland river system. The Missouri and Mississippi rivers, which converge in my district, support agriculture, manufacturing, energy, and multiple businesses throughout the district. We also have aging infrastructure that the federal government built decades ago and then sold off and abandoned. So as we work to develop WRDA 2026, I want to focus on 3 things. First, delivering on the already authorized projects and clearing the construction backlog. Second, prioritizing flood risk reduction and ecosystem restoration projects that address the real and present risks to Missouri families and landowners. And third, improving transparency and accountability so Congress and local sponsors know exactly what projects remain unfunded and, more importantly, why. Secretary Talley also pointed out that we have over $45 billion sitting undelivered nationwide, much of it decades old. That's unacceptable, especially when we have communities awaiting for much-needed infrastructure upgrades. So I look forward to discussing how WRDA 2026 can sharpen focus, restore fiscal discipline, and ensure the Corps builds what America and Missouri actually need. Secretary Talley, you stated that the Corps currently has $45 billion previously appropriated but not yet delivered, with $15 billion of that being more than 6 years old. Are there specific reforms that you would like to see implemented in WRDA 2026 to help prioritize completion of these already authorized construction projects, particularly flood risk and navigation projects in states like Missouri before authorizing new ones?
Congressman, thank you for the question, and congratulations on representing the part of America where the longest river intersects with the second longest river, the longest being the Missouri, just slightly. Look, I've been over it. I think some of this stuff is very fundamental and may not require an act of Congress to deliver on, just simply a changing culture. We have to empower our commanders. We're not doing that today. We're asking them to do everything all at once with the same level of effort. The reason a lot of this funding is stranded is because we get caught in endless loops of negotiation and back and forth, and this bureaucrat talking to that bureaucrat, this agency talking to that agency. And so I would say that that fundamental management change will do a lot to help free those unstranded resources. I think a directive from Congress to us to re-examine whether that $45 billion that's currently stranded, if it could be applied somewhere else more efficiently or appropriately, would be useful. But I think more importantly, we have to we have to make sure that, in particular, we get caught up in arguments with other federal agencies, our partners. My view, and what's part of building infrastructure, not paperwork, is that if we elevate these challenges here to echelon in Washington, we can look across at another agency and say, hey, let's solve this problem. I think about a project in Florida, in South Florida, Port Everglades. That project costs, to deepen and widen that port, cost $600 million. But the current price tag for that project is $3.2 billion. That means we, the United States of America, are paying 5x for a port on the basis of haggling between the interagency. And we can do a lot to fix that if we elevate it. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. Well, also for you, Mr. Talley, the Secretary Talley, the federal government constructed and later abandoned the Lock and Dam #1 on the lower Osage River in Missouri. It now poses safety and liability risks. Given that this is a clear legacy federal project, will the administration support WRDA 2026 authorization and funding prioritization for removal and ecosystem restoration on Lock and Dam #1?
Sir, I'm going to let General Graham take that one. He has the latest on that project.
Thank you.
Sir, quite versed in the challenge with Lock and Dam number 1 on the lower Osage River. Our commitment to you is to have a chief's report that I'll sign by the end of May.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Figures for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Secretary Tell and Lieutenant General Graham for being here today. Secretary, it's good to see you again. We were down, had the privilege to spend a little time with you down in Mobile a few months back when we were celebrating the deepening of that port, which is an example of what happens when communities can work together with the Corps to prioritize local and regional priorities from an infrastructure standpoint. And now we can proudly say, no disrespect to any of my other colleagues on the committee, that the port of Mobile, Alabama is the deepest port in the Gulf. The deepest, so deeper than Houston, deeper than New Orleans, deeper than Miami, deeper than Tampa. We are hopefully soon to be home to the largest amount of imports and exports coming in and out of the Gulf. As we begin work towards WRDA 2026, it's important that we recognize the breadth of water infrastructure challenges facing communities across the country. While navigation and major coastal projects often receive the brunt of the attention, many cities, large and small and rural especially, are grappling with aging water systems, inadequate stormwater infrastructure, sediment management challenges, and mounting wastewater needs. In my district, these are not abstract concerns. Communities are dealing with recurring flooding, failing or outdated water systems. In fact, one city in my district, Pritchard, Alabama, has a water system that has been described by experts who have worked in Flint, worked in Jackson, as America's worst water system. This certainly creates challenges that affect public health, economic development, environmental quality, and overall quality of life. And WRDA has long served as a bipartisan vehicle to address pressing water resource needs, as you guys well know. As we consider WRDA 2026, we must ensure that the Corps is equipped not only to maintain major navigation channels and large-scale projects, but also to partner with local communities on comprehensive water management solutions, particularly in areas facing infrastructure deficits. I look forward to discussing with you guys and working with you guys how the administration will prioritize water supply, wastewater, stormwater, and sediment management projects in WRDA 2026, and how we can ensure communities, especially small and mid-sized cities and rural communities, can effectively move projects forward through the Corps process. Our goal should be clear. We should be striving for a WRDA bill that strengthens infrastructure resilience, improves water quality, supports economic growth, and delivers meaningful long-term benefits to communities across this country, both large and small. Many of the Corps' projects authorized under Water Resources Development Act are vital for community safety, economic growth, and environmental and coastal resilience. Secretary Tell, I will start with you. How could underfunding, how could us not providing enough funding in WRDA for operations, maintenance, and construction affect the Corps' ability to deliver these authorized projects effectively?
Congressman, thank you for the question, and I would note that you invited me to join you in Mobile at the event that we attended together in this room from that very chair, and we wound up sitting next to each other. So that was great. In terms of resourcing operations and maintenance, this is critical. You'll see us emphasize operations and maintenance. General Graham just did, and we absolutely, there are key issues where additional funding included in the president's budget is required, but I believe that we can accomplish so much with the authorities and the funding that we have. We're not delivering sufficiently, in my view, on schedule and cost with what we have, and that's why you saw us yesterday introduce the Building Infrastructure, Not Paperwork initiative. This is designed to squeeze more out for every American community out of the resources that you provided. These decades-long schedules, these billions of dollars in cost, we can do better as America. Our water infrastructure is really the secret ingredient to our community's health and safety. It's a secret ingredient to our economy. And we have to, as a nation, I mean, this is the greatest civil engineering entity humanity has ever known, sitting next to me.
Well, thank you for that. I don't want to cut you off, but I do want
Yes, sir.
to, Lieutenant General Graham, I first want to highlight the work and reputation that your district commander in Mobile, Alabama is establishing for himself. Kelsey Shaw is doing a hell of a job by all accounts that we receive from local authorities, mayors, members of the city council, people that he engages with across my district, which is broad and vast. They are thrilled to have him there. They are enjoying working with him, and they feel heard more than anything else. And so I want to give him that acknowledgement. Lastly, look, I represent part of Hurricane Alley. And from an engineering perspective, obviously given funding cuts and staffing changes that we've seen over the past year plus, want to make sure that the Corps is ready and able. If a major hurricane today is to hit the Gulf Coast or anywhere in America, are you confident in the Corps' ability with its current resources to be able to respond effectively and efficiently to provide a timely response to major infrastructure damage that may happen from those storms, or do you need more?
Representative Figures, we absolutely are. With leaders like Colonel Shaw, making sure that we're staying in Army mode, whether that being under Corps authorities or whether we're working under Stafford Act under FEMA's authorities, our goal is always to help people as fast as we possibly can. And in your vulnerable part of this country, that's absolutely true.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you. And as somebody that wanted to attend that event, I couldn't, and I hate it because it was a great project and a good example of what the Corps can do. Came in under budget and under time, so it's a good project. The chair now recognizes Mr. Burleson for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After decades of frustration and myself being frustrated, representing my district for 3 years, coming here to our annual hearing that we would have, what a change. What a change. Secretary Tell, I cannot thank you enough for the sea change in attitude and respect for the citizens and the taxpayers and their neighbors. What a difference. Thank you for your leadership, General Graham. Thank you. I have, you and your, Brigadier General Walter have just demonstrated tremendous leadership that we haven't seen in decades. And I am so impressed with Lieutenant Colonel Jesse Carter. And just last week, he led a team from Little Rock office to my district to have a series of community meetings to explain the changes in the policies that they're going to have. And they were welcomed with positive feedback from the constituents in my district, and I cannot thank you enough. And first, I just wanted to say thank you. You have clearly demonstrated, Secretary Tell, almost a private sector attitude, the way in which you address trying to streamline processes, make the Corps faster, quicker, responsible, and again, this goes to both of you. It's impressive to see happen. Can you highlight some of the new initiatives that you guys have worked on, and if you want to make any comments about your experience at Table Rock Lake, that would be great.
Well, Congressman, I will just say we made a commitment to you in this room in September, and we followed through with that commitment, and I'm pleased to see that the situation has improved in Table Rock Lake. With regard to our initiatives, we're so proud of our building infrastructure, not paperwork initiatives. There are so many ways that we can improve here. I want to hit on something, since you've given me the opportunity, that General Graham hit on earlier, but we haven't fully articulated, which has to do with the way we contract for dredging. If you think about dredging, it's the equivalent of a snowplow plowing your street. It allows you to get back to work, and it's the equivalent for our nation of a snowplow clearing your street and enabling productivity. Unfortunately, the way we contract for this is regional in scope. We talked about this. We have less intelligence about the dredging activity across the nation when we're sitting across a negotiating table from a dredging provider than they do. We're often competing against ourselves, driving up costs across the country, having to run errands across the country in a way that's incredibly inefficient. We're already underway under building infrastructure, not paperwork, to elevating that contracting activity to a place where we have a national view, and it's going to make us far more efficient. It's going to make us allow us to squeeze every drop out of taxpayer dollars that we can. And so I'm extremely excited about that. There are a number of other ways that we can get into. I've got 1 minute and 23 seconds left. I can provide another vignette for you if you'd like, or I can answer another question, sir.
Well, but I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss thanking you also for the water allocation that we got from Stockton Lake after decades of Southwest Missouri sweating and worried about having drinking water availability in the future. That was something that was finally accomplished, and I can't thank you, and my district cannot thank you enough. I wanted to ask about some of the funding that the Corps has, about $45 billion in congressionally appropriated funds that included about $15 billion that had remained unspent for about 15 years. Knowing that in my district there's infrastructure that needs improvement, can you address that issue and what we may need to do if we need to make any changes in order to make sure that those funds are utilized?
Congressman, thank you for the question. And this is something we're working on every single day. We've analyzed every dollar of those $45 billion that are out there. Some of them are still part of a project that's active, and for one reason or another, we just haven't gotten to the point where we can start spending it. Some of it is stranded. Some of it will never be spent unless we repurpose it. And so we've been working with the Office of Management and Budget. We'll work with the Appropriations Committee. We'll work with this committee to try to make sure that, one, we're carrying through and executing the dollars that Congress has provided, but to the degree that those dollars are not. I mean, the enterprise, the Corps, has never had anyone. Most agencies have funding that expires. Much of our funding never expires. And the Corps has rarely had anybody come around and say, hey, if you don't spend this money, it's going to go away. We're going to execute the law, and we're going to spend the money that Congress has given us in the way that that Congress expects. However, someone needs to put some discipline into the system to get some decisions made on how to execute this money, and I've been doing that. I've been letting the enterprise know that if you don't spend the money you have, eventually Congress is going to take it back. And so we've been getting that message out. It's put a shock into the system. I think our fiscal folks across the board are now awake and interested in spending this money.
Thank you. And lastly, I just want to invite you again to come back to Table Rock. Every Veterans Day, we have an amazing event where our fishing guides, dozens and dozens of fishing guides, offer free guided service to our veterans. It is one of the most beautiful and Americana kind of event that you could ever see, and you both are invited to come. I would greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Congressman. If not for the lapse in appropriations, we might have joined you for that back in November.
Thank you. And I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Table Rock. The chair now recognizes Ms. Norton for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Army Corps supplies the District of Columbia's drinking water, and the Potomac River is the only source of that drinking water. With only 1 day of backup water supply, man-made or natural events that make the river unusable for drinking water would put residents, the district government, and the regional economy at risk. In 2022, at my request, the Congress authorized the Corps to conduct a feasibility study of a project, quote, project for the water supply, including the identification of a secondary water source and additional water storage capability for the Washington metropolitan area, end quote. Congress has appropriated $2,300,000 for the study. 2 weeks ago, the Corps informed me that it will likely limit the scope of the study to an expansion of the existing primary storage basin. That violates both the study's authorization and appropriation. Expansion of the reservoir is not a secondary water source. Lieutenant General Graham, why has the Corps decided to limit the study of the expansion of the reservoir?
Delegate Holmeshorn, thank you for that question. First off, I just want to assure the committee members and everybody listening that the water supply for the city, parts of Fairfax, and Arlington County are safe. The Army's been entrusted to run that water supply since right after the Civil War. So I know there's concerns with the sewage spill from the Potomac Interceptor up there up by 495, but that is a completely different system. We provide the treated water, and DC Water is responsible for distributing that water through the city, and they're also responsible for collecting and treating the sewage. Fortunately for the Washington Aqueduct, and ma'am, you're absolutely correct, our sole source of water, raw water, is the Potomac. We have 2 intakes in the Potomac River, one at Great Falls and one at Little Falls. The sewage interceptor leak was in between the two. And so the source of raw water coming into our treatment plant is pristine Potomac water right now, and we've shut off the Little Falls intake that's below the sewage spill. The Corps is under FEMA authorities and under EPA guidance responding to assist as part of the federal response. Our job right now, we have crews out there making sure that no additional stormwater interferes with what DC Water's doing to fix the interceptor, and we're also keeping additional stormwater from flowing to where the contaminated biosoil had accumulated after the break. Ma'am, to your question directly on the feasibility study that's going on, to Mr. Tell's point that we need to get to quick, immediate decisions on what can we do now to make things better. So the expansion of the Dela Carla Reservoir would add an additional 12 hours of supply. That's a 33% increase that's achievable near term. Ma'am, we're absolutely not taking off the table a look at, say, the Trafalgar, if I said that right, quarry, to look at a more longer term off Potomac tertiary source of water. So that certainly is not off the table.
Well, will you commit to expanding the scope of the study to identifying a secondary water source and additional water storage capability as required by federal law?
Ma'am, absolutely. We are not limiting the scope of this study, but we are looking for early actionable elements that we can put to make the resiliency of this city's drinking water safer as soon as possible.
What is the federal government's plan to provide emergency drinking water to DC in the event that the Potomac River becomes unusable for drinking water, as could have happened had a different portion of the Potomac interceptor collapsed last month?
Delegate Holmstrom, that's absolutely a important question that we need to address. Our sole source is the Potomac, and as I said, we have built redundancy into that with an upstream intake and a downstream intake. But there is no primary source that's off of the Potomac. They are looking to see if there's other interconnects we can possibly do with the other water treatment or water providers around the city, but that's the question that we will continue to explore.
Thank you. Last month, a section of the Potomac interceptor collapsed, causing hundreds of millions of gallons of wastewater to flow into the Potomac River. Not only is this an environmental disaster, but it also underscored the urgency of a secondary water source. Lieutenant General Graham, will the Corps provide DC Water financial assistance for the long-term rehabilitation of the Potomac interceptor?
Ma'am, thank you for the question. And I'll just say this challenge in the Potomac River is one of the greatest ecological disasters of its type to ever occur in our nation. We share your goal to ensure that the Washington, D.C. water supply has the necessary redundancies, given that the seat of government is here in Washington. It's a critically important goal. This is National Engineers Week, and I just want you to know I've done a special message to congratulate all of our engineers on the occasion of National Engineers Week, and I did it from the Washington Aqueduct because it is such an important facility. And I do think that this disaster underscores the importance of this facility for our nation. We're in the same position that you are. We agree, and I think it's a question of getting it right for the citizens, but also for the functioning of our government.
Thank you, and I yield back.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Crawford for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the witnesses for being here. In January of this year, you announced the removal of the Little Rock District Commander, citing, quote, a loss of confidence in his ability to command. This commander had assumed command less than 6 months prior to that decision. As you both know, leading an Army Corps district involves significant responsibility, and I'd say a pretty steep learning curve, particularly for an individual who may not have served in that capacity before. Given the relatively short tenure, it would be helpful to fully understand the context surrounding that decision. Can you share some details regarding the factors that led to the removal of the Little Rock District Commander?
I'm going to let General Graham address that question, Congressman Crawford. But I will just say, we talked with Congressman Burleson a few minutes ago. When we were in this hearing room in September, I announced to Congressman Burleson in response to his question that we had paused enforcement of encroachment at Table Rock Lake we had analyzed the information that his office had sent us. Really, we were doing casework on behalf of one of the members of this committee. I let Congressman Burleson know that we had paused enforcement while we came up with a common sense solution. 2 months later, I called down to the Little Rock District and said, hey, we're still hearing you haven't paused this activity. And I again directed them to pause this activity in accordance with the commitment I made to Congressman Burleson and other members of Congress. It wasn't until December, when I was on the ground there in the Little Rock District, that I was talking to one of Congressman Burleson's constituents in her driveway, and this individual told me that she was facing DOJ, heading to court under criminal accusations with DOJ as a result of the inability of the Little Rock District to follow the directions that General Graham gave them. And it broke my heart. It was right before Christmas. And this constituent of Congressman Burleson's, who I happened to meet that day, let me know that General Graham's direction had not been followed. And she was headed to court with the federal government chasing her on criminal accusations related to encroachments that we viewed as encroachment enforcement that we viewed as overly heavy-handed and not in the interest of the American public. And I will let General Graham take it from there.
So Representative Crawford, thank you for that question. And I'll just elaborate a bit on what Mr. Tell outlined. So it was my decision to remove the Little Rock District Engineer from command, not as a result of any ethical or moral failings, but rather because I lost confidence in their ability to exercise sound judgment.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to pause right there. So this was strictly the colonel's lack of judgment. Was there any assessment of the staff there that played a role in the decision to continue after they had been given the direction to cease, but they continued? Was there any action taken against those civilian staff?
So Representative Crawford, the commander's ultimately responsible for everything that organization does. That's the bedrock principles of the United States Army, and that's what makes us the best in the world.
Right, fair enough.
So the answer to your question, sir, is there were some additional individuals, many who have since retired or have left government service. We're right now moving in a seasoned second year or commander or colonel who has commanded before, and he will take a look at all the individuals and all of the policies of the district to see if any additional actions need to take place or what needs to change on the ground.
Okay, let me ask you this. So this is kind of where we run into a little bit of a gray area here because, you know, the individuals in the office are civilians, long-term, been there for many, many, many years. And then you have a colonel that comes in, he's brand new, he's 6 months on the job. And you issue a stand down. Is that accurate? You issued a stand down on that particular operation on Table Rock Lake?
A pause on enforcement.
Pause.
A pause on enforcement
Pause
so
on
that we could
And I'm-
assess and come up with a common sense solution.
Gotcha. And we've had similar instances, not on Table Rock Lake, but say, for example, Bull Shoals or Norfolk Lake or whatever, similar types of dynamics that have taken place there. So not faulting you at all on the cease enforcement notice. That's fair enough. The question I have is when there is a violation of this nature and it was so egregious that you removed the colonel from command, what further steps are taken to address this downstream of the colonel? Because he may be one of 2 or 3 that are actually active duty military present in that office. The rest are civilians. I'm curious what you do and how that chain of command works and how you address that problem going forward. If you have another colonel that may be being led by the office staff to do one thing after he's been given another set of instructions, like a cease of enforcement, what are you going to do in the future? Are we going to continue to fire colonels, or are we going to look at the office staff below the colonel?
Representative Crawford, it's a great question, and the way the Army works, we want to make sure that the chain of command is responsible for changing that culture that should never have existed at Table Rock Lake. That is the chain of command's responsibility. It is the chain of command's responsibility to make sure that those folks underneath them aren't being overly harsh on the enforcement of these rules, as we saw up at Table Rock Lake. That's their responsibility, and we're going to hold them accountable for it.
I appreciate that. The chairman's been very gracious in the latitude. I will say that Table Rock is not the only place that that's taken place, and I would also say that there is a cultural issue that needs to be addressed below the level of colonel.
Sir, acknowledged.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Desaulniers for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to, first of all, thank you for being here in the Corps, and also my deep appreciation and respect for the Corps' work representing a district, an area for a long time at multiple levels of government in the San Francisco Bay where the Delta meets it. The Corps has traditionally been very engineering-like and professional to work with, irrespective of administrations, frequently. However, not so much today, and that's a concern for me that I want to bring up for Mr. Tell. The number of authorized projects, and this is nationally, not just regionally, that aren't actually getting funding is a real problem because of the unique partnership that we have here with the state and local officials, particularly in sensitive areas like the one I get to represent. So we have asked you, the Congress, in 2018, 2020, and 2024 to give us an update. So we just want to know why it is that these are authorized, but funding has not been allocated, given the pressure. And the addition, I think I mention every year, is the addition to the change in weather, irrespective of how you believe that's happening. It's really important for our local and state officials to be able to do the engineering, fund these projects, and rely on you to get them out after they've been authorized.
Congressman, you're correct. The current authorized but unfunded total of our portfolio is $78 billion. That number is likely an underestimate of the work that has been authorized by this committee in cooperation with the Congress at large. One thing is for sure, the demand on the services that the Corps of Engineers provides is higher than the supply that we can provide. But as we just had a discussion a few minutes ago about $45 billion of funds that have been appropriated but unexpended, our problem is not that we need more money in every case. In most cases, we need to be better at executing that funding. We need to be better at delivering that funding. We need to be better at overcoming obstacles. That's why the Building Infrastructure, Not Paperwork initiative that we announced yesterday is going to empower our commanders. It's going to empower our commanders to identify which priorities are important for their district, and then we're going to hold them accountable year to year for executing against them. And that includes moving projects from authorization to feasibility to engineering to design, and then to construction and eventually to operations and maintenance. And so I share your frustration. That's my perspective on it.
Yeah, and I just, again, having been at this for a while, my hair has changed color. It's just frustrating. And engineering is engineering, and to the degree that we trust you to do the engineering side of it, but the project delivery, there sometimes is a lack of urgency from my perspective. And if it needs permitting, if it's rational and makes it more efficient, but doesn't, we can analyze what we may be losing from permit efficiency and not just opening up further problems. Should be completely bipartisan, in my experience on this committee as it is. So from an analytical standpoint, let us know what the problems are and just get down and figure out what it is to make sure we get this done.
Sir, if I could just let you know my perspective, this is included in the building infrastructure, not paperwork initiative that we rolled out yesterday. Right. One of the odd things about the Civil Works mission is that the project funding that Congress provides to the Corps of Engineers is then also the funding that pays for the salaries of our district employees,
right,
who are wonderful in most cases. That means that if this committee or the Congress appropriates $100 million for a project, $33 million of that project on average is paying the salaries of our employees. Mm-hmm. In my view, this can create a perverse incentive to our employees, our districts, to continue projects long beyond when they could have delivered them, because there's an incentive to always add a new bell or a new whistle, study something a little bit longer. That actually sustains the district, or to grab a project off the shelf that maybe isn't a strategically important project in order to sustain it. And I think if we separate project execution of project funding from the district salaries, I think it will remove that perverse incentive, and General Graham will be able to manage his organization in a way that where delivery is the objective, not sustainment of districts.
I just wish, I wish we could be more analytical about this. I represent an area in Region 9, and when you cut EPA, that affects everybody. And if you get rid of really good employees, because as you said, not everybody's good in any organization, but we've lost really good employees in other agencies that affects your work, and you know that. General Graham, just briefly, how do you prioritize these projects given everything we just said?
Representative Del Sonia, thank you very much for that question. If I could just quickly go back to your previous question, one of the initiatives under building infrastructure, not paperwork, is let's get the project right at the beginning, mm-hmm. right, which is what your frustration. All these projects, we sometimes lose sight of this. There's a need out in somebody's community for to fix a navigation project, or there's a flooding challenge. Right? If we don't get the engineering up front, this committee can't authorize to build this scope of project correctly. And if we don't get the engineering right up front, we can't possibly give you a good cost estimate. And so that's what's bedeviled us on a lot of that $78 billion is it's sitting at really immature engineering. So we haven't really told you what we're going to go build, and we certainly haven't made solid commitments on what the cost is going to be. Prioritization on my end, to answer your second question, sir, directly, is finish what we start. Efficient funding for the work that we've been told to start is the best way to project delivery and delivery for your constituents.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The chair now recognizes Ms. Poe for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me just say I want to thank both the Assistant Secretary and Lieutenant Graham for being here. You know, the work of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is deeply personal for the families and small businesses in the New Jersey 9th Congressional District. My district includes communities along the Passaic River Basin, one of the most flood-prone watersheds in the United States. Towns like Patterson, Clifton, Edgewater, Lodi, and Elmwood Park has suffered from repeated and devastating flooding, needing our help. Heavy rains, higher tides, and coastal storms have caused repeated flooding, erosions, and new threats to infrastructure. When these crises arise, we need to quickly communicate with the Army Corps. Sadly, recent politicizing effort by the Pentagon has made quick and the necessary communication all but impossible. Now the Army Corps must get approval before even speaking with congressional offices. And here I thought this administration wanted to cut red tape instead of cause more. Fortunately, WRDA gives us a unique opportunity to streamline the backlog Army Corps projects and mitigate identification challenges that have left communities like mine waiting for far too long. That is why I introduced the Clean Up Act, legislation that allows the Army Corps to remediate contaminated sentiments under the CERCLA by using an EPA-approved cleanup plan developed with local partners for authorized water projects. Assistant Secretary Tell and Lieutenant General Graham, this question is for both of you. Do you believe an EPA-approved indemnification waiver for the Army Corps would reduce decades-old projects timeline like the ones we have in the lower Saddle River? And if yes, can you please talk about how it would help?
Congresswoman Poe, thank you for the question. And I haven't been able to review your legislation yet. I'm happy to take a look. I will say that a project in your district, New York, New Jersey HATS, which is a broad, an important project, large in scope, we believe may be one of the first projects in the nation to benefit from the rapid process that we're instilling as a result of building infrastructure, not paperwork. I'll let General Graham hit the specifics of that, but we think we have a real opportunity in your district to start bringing a very complex project, breaking it up into the piece parts that are most important to your constituents, get to work, and then move on to the next steps.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Secretary.
So Representative Poe, certainly the East Riser Ditch project as a spinoff from the Hudson River and Tributaries project is a great one for us to get started to better provide flood protection to your constituents. To the indemnification issue, we greatly appreciate you taking a look at that. So under some authorities, if there's a contaminated area, if we go in there and say it's a highly contaminated, we then potentially could become a principal responsible party. And that sometimes gets us just stuck, that we can't move what's needed. The contamination's not going to clean itself. And so I think exploring that topic would be a great way to clean up the environment more readily, and I think it's much needed.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for that answer. Let me just say, and I believe you just mentioned the New York, New Jersey harbor and tributary studies is also essential, as you've just mentioned, for preparing the region for future storms and increasingly frequent flooding. Congress, as you know, has directed the Corps in the last three WRDAs to leverage the HATS analysis to address all types of flooding for the entire study area. It also requires the Corps to advance interim projects that are smaller in size, lower in cost, and prioritize nature-based solutions to reduce risk in the near term. Now, Section 1343 of the 2024 WRDA directs the Corps to investigate and recommend projects that reduce flood risk in the HATS area. This includes examining individual flood risk and the combined effects of heavy rainstorms, storm surge, river flooding, sea level rise, and groundwater. This directive also emphasizes not just preventing damage, but producing new public benefits that habitat and natural systems, as well as community benefits like safety, resilience, and quality of life. Assistant Secretary Tells and Lieutenant Governor Grant, what actions does the Corps plan to take to implement the WRDA 2024 Section 1343? Specifically, what is the Corps specifically doing to evaluate and recommend projects to address both individual and combined flood risk while maximizing benefit for New York, New Jersey harbor and tributary studies?
Representative Poe, I'll take that start. We will have the East Riser Ditch Chief's report over to this committee by, I'm tracking right now, in June. I know the committee—
This June?
This June.
Okay.
for us to do just that, right? Large problem flooding throughout the Hudson Bay, Raritan Bay, and to break that down into chunks that we can get after. Certainly East Riser Ditch is one that we're going to recommend for approval in Ward of 26.
Thank you so very much. It's vital that we work together on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Ezell for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see both of you guys here today, and I really appreciate all your hard work and the hard work of this committee. Thank you for letting me wave on. Secretary Tell, non-federal stakeholders in my district are often given cost estimates from the Center for Cost Expertise, but there's no transparency into how those costs were calculated. Is there any way that we can address this in WRDA, or is this going to be an administrative priority?
Well, Congressman, I share much of your frustration. You've been a great advocate for the Port of Gulfport. A lot of the work that you have done to identify this problem for us has caused us to relook and work with the non-federal sponsor to get an answer that makes more sense. I think General Graham may have some news to share with you there. I'm not gonna get in front of him on that. But this is a challenge. We have benefit to cost ratio, and both math problems, the numerator and the denominator, often confuse our non-federal sponsors. So I think transparency, which is exactly what we did in your district with your non-federal sponsor, was to sit down at the table, share our math, compare notes, and get to a result that everybody could stand behind.
Thank you. General?
Representative, so absolutely, we're looking for more transparency, more partnership with our non-federal partners, that, as its name implies. Somewhere in that mix, though, this is a contract that's going to go out, and we've just got to be careful on some of our acquisition pricing to make sure that that information, remains with the confidentiality that it deserves. But I think we can absolutely strike the right balance and become much more transparent.
Thank you. To follow up on that, Mr. Taylor, is it an administrative priority to implement a stakeholder review of the cost estimation process? For example, Gulfport was given a cost estimate of $40 million for its overhead dredging facilities, yet there's no appeal process to help us understand where that number came from, likely because the port and probably even the Mobile district don't believe it's accurate.
Congressman Ezell, I share your frustration. Again, I think that this is something we can do better at. I think we can be more transparent.
Yep.
I think we could save our non-federal sponsors a lot of time and effort if we would share with them our math.
Yep.
And work together. And it doesn't always mean they're going to get a BCR above 1,
right.
But we can do much better.
Thank you. I want to turn to dredging just for a second, and the dredging material. The Gulf Coast, as you know, could use dredging material almost anywhere. I'll ask both of you, is there any update on where the Corps is with implementing reusable dredging material?
General Graham, I'll let you take that one.
Representative, absolutely. Treating dredge material not as a waste product, but as a valuable commodity is our absolute commitment. We had been doing about 30% what's called beneficial reuse, taking that mud or sand where it's in the way of our ships and moving it somewhere, usually in the environment where it'll do something good. Our goal is to get to 70%. So we're kind of moving past 30% right now, and our goal is to get to 70%. And this committee has given us some additional authorities to do that, which we appreciate.
I'll just add, Congressman Ezell, that under building infrastructure, not paperwork, one of the initiatives we have is a couple of the initiatives we have, one, encourage non-federal sponsors, ports like the Port of Gulfport or others, to have a plan of what they do with their dredge material ahead of time, so we're not confronting these issues in the middle of a project. We can incentivize and encourage that type of behavior. And the other is to open up mitigation banking in a way that allows for more flexibility and better environmental outcomes when we do the work we have to do to dredge important ports like Gulfport.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, we talked about your initiative to build infrastructure, not paperwork, and I want to say that this is the best news I've heard coming from the Corps in a long time. I think everyone here would agree that the Army Corps needs to build or assist with building and move away from the burdensome bureaucratic process that have hindered states and local communities for decades. If I can be anything I can do to help with this, please let us know. And thank you both for your time today and all your hard work. And I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Stanton for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Assistant Secretary Tell, and General Graham. Thank you for being here today. I don't have to tell either of you how urgent water security challenges that Arizona faces, how bad they are, with national security impacts that go far beyond state lines, particularly with our leadership in the critical semiconductor industry. They demand quick federal action. Yet Secretary Hegseth's October 25 directive that all congressional communications from the Corps be funneled first through the Pentagon has interrupted regular communication and close collaboration between my office and the Corps. Congress cannot be left in the dark on project limitation and delays in our districts. I trust our conversation today will be quickly followed by a commitment to schedule a meeting with myself and my staff.
Sir, we're at your service anytime you want to talk to us.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working closely together as WRDA 26 progresses. Arizona and the rest of the West have long suffered a historic drought, but we are operating under increasing uncertainty over the diminishing Colorado River. Negotiation over the river's future have not led to a lasting agreement between the Colorado River Basin states, despite a strong offer from Arizona, Nevada, and California. And worse, the Bureau of Local Relations' backup plan for the river threatens deep cuts to Arizona's water supplies. Look, Arizona knows how we do more with less regarding water. Arizona's leadership in water conservation storage, particularly in high-tech irrigation and water recycling, means we already use less water now than we did 60 years ago, even with a growing population. But with these looming cuts, make continued support for environmental infrastructure assistance in the 26 WRDA even more critical. In Arizona, EI dollars support meaningful drought resiliency efforts in communities and tribal nations. That's water lines, wastewater improvements, and aquifer recharge projects that will make a real difference as we make the most of the limited Colorado River supplies. But getting to groundbreaking has been beyond frustrating. Just one of 24 funded projects under Arizona EI has started construction. That is unworkable. Unfortunately, we've seen lengthy environmental reviews put a hold on project Arizona needs today. I appreciate that the Corps has streamlined its NEPA processes last June and utilizes more categorical exclusions for EI projects. But our water situation demands we work faster, making more improvements to expedite these reviews. Assistant Secretary Tell, how is the Corps working to ensure that EI projects funded by Congress get out the door to communities in a timely and efficient manner? What additional resources or authorities like expanded categorical exclusions or flexible funding reallocations will help move these important projects forward?
Congressman, thank you for the question. And I will just say, General Graham and I were recently in Phoenix together. This is a community that has been figuring it out when it comes to water since before Arizona was a state, before the United States of America was a country. So it's a community that understands this challenge. With regard to NEPA, I will say thank you for recognizing the reforms that we implemented last year to NEPA to follow the law, but as you said, include categorical exclusions, which are almost like TSA pre-check for environmental review. It makes things faster, clear rules of the road here. This is what we're doing throughout building infrastructure, not paperwork, is reducing the regulatory challenges by implementing smart policies that will allow projects like this to move ahead. And obviously, when it comes to environmental infrastructure, it's a different type of project and something that we, frankly, it's not within the core missions, the core expertise of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We're in the business of major flood control projects, major navigation projects, major aquatic ecosystem restoration projects. General Graham and his team don't have particular expertise when it comes to municipal water systems. So one of the ways that we can actually deliver these projects more efficiently is by going out to the private sector, folks who municipality would otherwise contract with for this. And when Congress does provide money for this purpose, we believe that our private sector partners can quite often execute it much more efficiently than we can.
Thank you very much. I was able to secure authorization for increased spending limit for Trace Rios in the Phoenix area in WRDA 24, but it's been years with no substantive movement towards resuming construction. It's a critical project for my community. Assistant Secretary Tell, will the Corps commit to prioritizing funding and staff resources to finally move Trace Rios forward?
Congressman, I will defer to General Graham for an update on Trace Rios.
Thank you.
So we understand how important that project is with you, or for you and your constituents, and the fact that that's been ongoing for a while. I don't have the specifics with me, but we're happy to get back to you on when we're moving forward. But what I do recall is that this last increment was going to be positively received, and we'll get the exact specifics back to you. But it is on my radar as a very important project.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Fong for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Assistant Secretary Tell, Lieutenant General Graham, thank you for being here. Thank you for your leadership. Secretary Tell, especially for you, thank you for coming to my district to see our water projects firsthand. Your personal attention, words can't describe how important that is to my community. I was encouraged to see your announcement of the Corps' new initiative, Building Infrastructure, Not Paperwork. I see this as an exciting, promising step towards delivering more cost-effective water resource projects on time and on budget. As I've outlined to you, just in my district alone, there are a number of feasibility studies in the queue and that are currently underway, or hopefully will be currently underway. How do you foresee this initiative delivering more projects to the construction phase in the near term?
Congressman Fong, thank you for the question. I mean, I'll just say, as we were putting the finishing touches on building infrastructure, not paperwork, there was a moment we had when we were out in your district, and one of the local officials was talking about his hope that the investments that we make today might benefit his grandchildren. And he had a realistic perspective on our program, which is it takes generations quite often to deliver things like Pine Flat Dam, which is important to your district. And it was a sad moment for me because we've almost conditioned our stakeholders out in the field to think that our work's going to take generations, and it shouldn't be that way. A member of Congress who gets elected to represent their district ought to have the ability to deliver results for their district while they're a member of Congress, not decades later. And so I just want to tell you how much our interaction out there in the Fresno area really informed our perspective on how important what we're doing is. And we believe this will benefit every project, including important projects like the raising of Pine Flat Dam.
Perfect. Well, that's music to my ears, and certainly appreciate you acknowledging the importance of the raise of Pine Flat Dam. In the last WRDA bill, Congress called for expediting certain studies, including this project, but have yet to discuss a cost-sharing agreement with our water districts. If you could you provide an update on the Pine Flat Dam Reservoir Raise project? Can we commence the feasibility study by 2028?
Congressman, I don't have the latest on Pine Flat. I'm not sure if General Graham does, but you can rest assured we will get you an answer immediately.
Perfect. Also, during our discussion in my district, we touched on the potential of the Corps continuing to use forecast-informed reservoir operations, otherwise known as FIRO, and incorporating airborne snow observation flights to better predict and manage snowpack, which is extremely important in California, especially with the snowstorms that just came through. How does the Corps plan to incorporate advanced technologies into their water control strategies, especially in the western United States?
Well, Congressman Fong, what we learned when we were in your district recently was, we like to talk about FIRO. It's a great tool to squeeze as much water as we can, as much flood relief as we can out of our existing facilities by looking at weather patterns and making smart judgments about when to take risk. What we really learned, though, from your district was that what's called SIRO, snow-informed reservoir operations, is even more important. And this is where we or our partners fly LiDAR flights above the mountains when there's no snow, and then we fly LiDAR above the mountains when there is snow, and we make a determination about the snowpack. And this actually is an area where we can do more and better to, again, continue to squeeze as much as we possibly can out of our existing infrastructure at a relatively low cost.
Well, thank you for that. As you know, water is life for us. I represent the food production capital of California, so we look forward to the partnership in incorporating this new technology so that we can move more water in real time as we get it. Lastly, as you saw in your visit, there's a significant potential to provide additional water resources in California through the Red Bank and Fancher Creek project, which is also undergoing a feasibility study. During your visit, I believe General Kelly offered his team's assistance in rescoping the existing study to incorporate a more streamlined and scalable decision-making scope to be aligned with the transformation initiative that you've outlined, which would significantly reduce the budget of the existing study. Can the Army Corps' leadership work with the Sacramento District in reducing the scope even more while remaining compliant with the Corps' new initiative here?
Representative Fong, if I could, going back to your earlier question, when you spoke to Pine Flats study, funding will be one of the needs to move that dam raise study forward. Turning to Red Bank and Fancher Creek, as General Kelly probably talked to you about, carving off the Dry Creek portion of that, taking a look and see what we can do with that dry reservoir to see if we can hold on to more floodwater longer and release that for managed aquifer recharge. Certainly that's a bit of low-hanging fruit that we ought to work together on.
Well, these projects are certainly very important. I've run out of time, but Secretary Tell, General Graham, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your partnership, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you. I yield back.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Carbajal for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Assistant Secretary Tell and Lieutenant General Graham, for testifying today. When you went to my colleague, Representative Fong's district, you should have come over the mountains to Paradise, which is my district, right on the coast. But I'm sure his district was almost as beautiful as mine. I represent the Central Coast of California, which encompasses a diverse portfolio of core projects that promote public safety, strengthen economic vitality, and support Coast Guard operations and national security. I've always appreciated the work that the Corps does through Democratic or Republican administrations. You guys always do extraordinary work, and oftentimes in a nonpartisan way, which is really what the American people expect. Secretary Tell, for some reason, Santa Barbara Harbor dredging was left out of the President's budget for fiscal year 26. Despite its critical role in supporting the Coast Guard, national security, our regional economy, and coastal operational needs. I sent you a letter on January 26th, following enactment of the Energy and Water Appropriations Bill, advocating on behalf of Santa Barbara Harbor and the $4 million they need in the fiscal year 26 core work plan. I bring this to your attention to ask that you give it your full and fair consideration. I hope I can get your commitment that you will take a look at this and my office can follow up with your team on this. Perhaps you could come out to Paradise, just like you did to Mr. Fong's district, to see some of these projects. Secretary Tell, the Salinas Dam in San Luis Obispo County is currently owned by the Corps. San Luis Obispo County has indicated their interest in taking ownership of this project. We have had numerous conversations with the Corps, both the LA District and headquarters, regarding this ongoing back to my first term in Congress, in the 115th Congress, almost 10 years ago. In the last bipartisan WRDA bill of 2024, enacted into law, I was able to successfully include a provision that allows the Corps to convey the Salinas Dam to the San Luis Obispo County government. This was Section 1306 of the bill. Can you provide me with an update on ongoing discussions with San Luis Obispo County regarding this conveyance?
Congressman Carbajal, I looked at General Graham. He does not have an update on that. We commit to get you one here before the end of the day.
Great.
And I will say that Congressman Fong's district is beautiful, and I hope to visit yours. I also got to say, the manager of Pine Flat Dam is a son of a citrus farmer, and we managed to find our way to some oranges and some clementines and some lemons while we were out there, and I got to recommend them to everybody. It's the best thing I've ever tasted.
Well, that's because you haven't tasted the wine in my country, the Central Coast. Should we make the law more clear as it relates to the conveyance language that I got in the bill to help?
Congressman Carbajal, I'm not aware of any need we have related to legislation, but we will get you an update by the end of the day.
Thank you. Let me just say that it feels like we've just been going in circles on this issue. So to the extent that you could give it your attention and help us resolve a clear path forward, I would greatly appreciate it. Secretary Tell, as you are probably aware, construction of the Lower Mission Creek project in Santa Barbara has been authorized since the year 2000 and was later amended in 2007 to reflect the cost share between the federal and non-federal partners. Despite this project being shovel-ready, our local government, having invested over $18 million in non-federal resources, federal dollars have not been made available. I understand the Corps' recent updated the principles, requirements, and guideline procedures to more accurately capture total public value and taxpayer return on federal investments. Would these new standards help with the positive BCR score for the Lower Mission Creek?
Congressman, we just had an outstanding conversation with Congressman Ezell about this same issue. I believe that we could do more in terms of providing transparency to non-federal sponsors in relation to the costs and benefits and how we calculate them. We don't need to be doing this math in a black box. We need to be sharing it and making sure everybody is in agreement, even if the non-federal sponsor disagrees. But I would anticipate that the updated guidance that you mentioned will benefit projects like this one, because we're always able to take into consideration more than just the raw economic numbers and consider other factors.
Thank you very much. You have a standing invitation to visit my district anytime. I know traditionally administrations make visits to only members of their parties, but I sure hope you'll consider coming to my district.
Sir, I'm happy to do it. We've been out to California numerous times since I've been in this role, and I look forward to getting back out there.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. Are there any further questions from any members of the subcommittee who have not been recognized? All right, seeing none, the chairman's going to indulge because he is the chairman. I just thought I'd take a couple of minutes. You know, as I sat through this whole hearing and listened, I think y'all understand a little bit of the issues, and that's the fact that people are always asking about the same projects over and over and over that haven't been authorized, and the studies aren't complete. And as a small business person, been in small business all my life, it's nice to see that sometimes you take a look at just what the problem is. And it may not be bad people, it may be the process. And you take an inwardly look, and it's exciting to see that both of you are doing that. And to just look at the process maybe. Maybe we're looking at the process wrong so that we can speed up things for Mr. Carbajal, who probably would love to come to Georgia to get some good barbecue. But it is good to see that. And even though this will be my last water bill as a member of the House, or I won't be at the next one anyway, it's exciting I would love to see just how many of these projects that people just come in and sit down and say, thank you, it's completed, or it's in the appropriation phase. So with that, I appreciate y'all coming today. Thank you for your testimony, and this subcommittee stands adjourned.